When Alexander the Great died in Babylon, his vast empire spanning 3 continents and covering a staggering 5 million square kilometers began to tear itself apart. As rival generals fought for power, local kingdoms rose, determined to break free from Macedonian rule. The once unified empire was now on the brink of collapse, plunging the ancient world into chaos and igniting a storm of betrayal, bloodshed, and ruthless ambition. The real crisis, however, emerged from the fact that Alexander left behind no adult heir to inherit his throne. His only official successors were his cognitively impaired half-brother, Philip III Aridaeus, and his unborn son by Roxana, Alexander IV. Since neither could rule effectively, a regent was needed to govern the empire on their behalf. Fearing chaos without a central authority, Perdiccas, a high-ranking officer and one of Alexander's most trusted commanders, was appointed regent during a council of Alexander's top general in what we now call the Partition of Babylon, to rule on behalf of his brother and his unborn son. However, his greed and misjudgment would ignite a civil war among Alexander's successors. To expand his influence, Perdiccas first arranged a marriage with Nicaea, daughter of Antipater, the most powerful man in Macedon. Although they were married, it lasted only a few months. Perdiccas soon shifted his alliance to Alexander's mother, Olympias, who offered him a far more tempting proposal. For Perdiccas, this was the ultimate insult. Marrying Cleopatra would have tied Perdiccas directly to Alexander's royal family and secure his claim to Macedonian throne itself. Unsurprisingly, Perdiccas accepted Olympias' offer and ended his alliance with Antipater, move that left him feeling deeply betrayed and outraged. As others in the Macedonian elite began to fear Perdiccas' growing political ambition, including Antipater and Ptolemy, who saw the proposed marriage not as a political formality, but as a bold attempt to seize the throne. In a strategic move, Ptolemy hijacks Alexander's body on his way to Macedonia and diverts it to Memphis, the capital of Egypt at the time. For Perdiccas, this was the ultimate insult. Alexander became the first Greek pharaoh of Egypt during his campaign against the Achaemenid Empire under Darius III. He was declared the son of Amun, considered one of the most important and powerful gods in ancient Egyptian religion. By giving Alexander a royal Egyptian burial, Ptolemy gains a huge advantage, winning the support of Greeks and native Egyptians and cementing his position as Egypt's rightful ruler. From Memphis to Macedonia, his message spreads like wildfire. Ptolemy will never bow to Perdiccas. Feeling betrayed and humiliated, Perdiccas marches on Egypt, determined to cross Ptolemy and reclaim Alexander's body. But his campaign ends in disaster when thousands of his men drown trying to cross the Nile. As he is planning his next move in his tent, Perdiccas' men, burning with rage, storm in and stab him to death, ending his rule just 2 years into his regency. In the following decades, Alexander's former generals will engage in a 4-decade war of unrelenting bloodshed for control of the empire, a conflict history remembers as the Wars of the Diadochi. After Perdiccas' death, Antipater was named regent of the empire, but he soon passed away due to his declining health and old age. Instead of naming his son Cassander as his successor, Antipater chose Polyperchon to take the role of regent, a decision that Cassander fiercely opposed and refused to accept. Left with no other choice, he began plotting to seize power by force. With the support of Ptolemy and Antigonus, Cassander took control of Macedonia, forcing Polyperchon to retreat and costing him much of his influence. He fled south and eventually vanished from the political stage, never reclaiming any true influence. History has often portrayed Cassander as a tyrannical character, with a deep hatred for Alexander the Great. According to Plutarch, when Cassander first arrived in Babylon, he mocked Alexander's embracing of Persian customs, especially the practice of bowing or kneeling before the king, which many Macedonians, including Cassander, found disgraceful. Furious at Cassander's mockery, Alexander grabbed him by the hair and slammed his head against the wall, a public humiliation that likely planted the seed of a deep and lasting grudge. Cassander knew that as long as Alexander's bloodline survived, his claim to the Macedonian throne would remain at risk. Behind the curtain, Philip III Aridaeus was simply a puppet of Cassander, who was pulling the strings to seize control of Macedonia. At the same time, Eurydice, the wife of Aridaeus, had her own political ambition and allied with Cassander to undermine Alexander's direct heir. She openly opposed Alexander's mother, Olympias, and saw herself as the guardian of Alexander's legacy and his son. In truth, both Eurydice and Philip III were simply pawns in his ruthless game, as he sought to erase Alexander's bloodline. Olympias, however, was no stranger to treachery. Known for her political ruthlessness, she quickly saw the pieces moving against her. In a brutal turn of events, Olympias went on a killing spree. She first ordered the execution of her stepson, King Aridaeus, who was stabbed to death by her guards, and forced his wife Eurydice to take her own life. Then over 100 nobles loyal to Cassander were massacred, including his brother Nicanor. After this carnage, she fled to Pydna, a coastal fortress in Macedonia, and took refuge there until Cassander's army arrived. In the meantime, Cassander mobilized his force and marched to the city, where he laid siege for a month before finally forcing her to surrender, under the promise that her life would be spared. Cassander was anything but merciful. He handed her over to the families of those nobles she had previously executed, many of whom were loyal to him. She was publicly stoned to death. To add further insult, they denied her the honor of a royal burial. A few years later, Cassander secretly ordered the execution of Alexander's wife, Roxana, and his son Alexander IV, ending Alexander's dynasty. Among the key generals who founded powerful dynasties was Ptolemy I, who seized control of Egypt and established the Ptolemaic dynasty, one that would last 300 years and end with the reign of Cleopatra VII. Similarly, Seleucus I founded the mighty Seleucid Empire, which came to dominate much of Asia, stretching from Syria and Mesopotamia to Persia, and even parts of northwestern India. Other notable figures included Antigonus the One-Eyed, who came close to reuniting Alexander's empire under his rule, but ultimately failed. Cassander took control of Macedon in 316 BCE and later declared himself king. He ruled for 18 years before dying of edema, marking the end of his reign.